Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of these crazy fools that just keep eating meat and can't shut up about it. Today it's just me and Justin, although Ray may pop in. Who knows? Somebody else might pop in, but I kind of doubt it at this point. So anyways, today we want to dial back the timeline a little bit and talk about some of the things we heard in the beginning that was encouraging to us. And the reason why I'm doing that is because as I meet new people, they find out that I just eat meat and they're just kind of curious. They're not steeped in all the carnivore lore. They've never been on a keto diet. And you first tell them like, yeah, I've just been eating meat for years. I know people have been just eating meat for much longer than I have, and we're all healthy and all that. And they're like, really? And then it's the exact opposite of what we grew up being told, right? So they're always interested in what were those little cracks in the facade that we saw that kind of encouraged us or made us think that was possible to just eat meat and eschew plants. So me and Justin are going to kind of try and pick through our brains and see if we remember some of the things we've heard along the way, particularly in the beginning, that kind of made us think that this might be a legit way of living. So you got anything to kick it off with, Justin, or you want me to go?
Yeah, I mean, I can start with a few things. I think the way now thinking about it is it kind of feels like only eating meat as subtext. And when I say that is because, anyone that's, had grandparents, you always know a grandparent or they knew someone or was in the family that would eat brain or liver or kidney or some kind of organ. Liver and onions, is a delicacy for, Europeans, at least in the old country, you know. And so it's kind of always been in the background. And is it was it convincing necessarily at the time? No. But as I've gone on this journey, it's kind of like, oh, now it makes sense, you know? And another thing that just popped in my mind while you were talking is, my sister and I think some other family members doing Atkins, what is that, the 90s, you know? And like I must have been 8 or 9 or something like that. And my sister doing Atkins and loving it. Of course, she went back to carbs because I don't think Atkins is as effective as carnivore, or maybe just because it didn't have the support and things like that. Don't know exactly why Atkins seemed to have failed or dropped off. Maybe Tom, maybe you can talk more on that since you were more cognizant than I was. I was a child at the time.
Yeah, I got a few years on you. Let's see. You're 32 now. Is that right?
31, but
31. So you're 31 and I'm 49. So yeah, I've got a little bit, I'm 18 years older than you or something like that. So yeah, I probably remember that era a little bit better than you do.
right, yeah. And then my dad hated vegetables.
Hmm.
He liked fruit. He obviously liked sugar, like everyone else, but he hated vegetables. So like we'd get In-N-Out, which here in California, SoCal, In-N-Out's like the S. I heard that they actually opened a new In-N-Out in Colorado,
Yes.
and there's what, like a 12-hour line or 20-hour line?
14, they say 14 hours to get a hamburger. Yeah, I don't know why we're so obsessed with our In-N-Outs, but apparently there's plenty of Californians in Colorado who had to have it. That might have a little something to do with, time of day. Maybe sometime after 420, they decided they all needed a burger. I don't know. Colorado is sort of known for, having a lot of cannabis on hand. It's maybe not quite as good as California cannabis. Go California, number one cash crop. But yeah, I don't know. 14-hour lines to get a burger, amazing, right? And the world's smallest menu at any restaurant, right?
Right.
You get a burger, you can get fries, you can get a soft drink, or you can get a shake, or
More burger.
more burger. That's it. In fact, do you remember? Did you ever see that interview? I think it was an old Joe Rogan where he's talking to Anthony Bourdain. You know Anthony Bourdain?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, he was asking who made his favorite burger, and he said In-N-Out. blew my mind because he's from New York. He worked in New York, grew up in New York, right? And he
Right.
admired the In-N-Out burger. It's like, wow. So, so there you go, staying power. You know.
Yeah, 100%. So anyway, my father, and because he would do it, I would do it, obviously, was, I remember his order was, you know, uh, double spread only. When we know the spread isn't great, but no tomato, no lettuce, no grilled onion, nothing like that, which is really funny. Obviously still not carnivore, obviously still not healthy. And my dad had a handful of other unhealthy habits. But I mean, I think my dad, if he, was still with us, had I told him about carnivore, I
Mhm.
honestly think it would have made sense to him, just kind of instinctively, kind of being more of a mountain man, just in general, hunting, fishing, that's just kind of the way it is. And so
Right.
that kind of plays a part into it too. If you have family that are big into hunting, when you go and fish, or when you go and have a hunt, and you go have that for dinner, you're not really preparing other stuff, right? I mean,
Right.
you're just having that fish while you're camping, or you're
Right.
just having that kill of the day,
Right. Yeah. So I think you're right. To a lot of people, especially living on the farm or whatever, I mean, they eat fresh meat all the time. You know, they raise the animals and slaughter them for food and sell to make a living, and it's just part of life. And the other stuff was mostly seasonal, right? They might be eating bread all the time because flour keeps all year, but the berries and stuff like that, that was just all seasonal, right? So it made sense that like every day they eat meat, you know, eggs probably too, right? Because what farm doesn't have a few chickens on it, pretty much. Yeah, so I think for me it was kind of a revelation when like I started realizing that I knew I had allergies to certain things like walnuts, honeydew. There's a few weird things like that. Like if I ate peanuts or something, I didn't notice anything, but if I ate a walnut, I could get a blister instantly. And then I started talking to more and more people like, yeah, same thing. I can't eat this, I can't eat that. And then you started hearing like, I think the lure was in the beginning, it's like, oh, fiber is good for you. It should keep you from getting polyps, which are precancerous to getting cancer, bowel cancer or whatever. And then you come to find out, like you're reading these studies, like, well, we think what's really going on is, fiber is really just irritating the lining of your digestive tract. It's not necessarily some process in there that necessarily needs to be taking place, but that this is actually an irritant, right? And then you find out, oh, there's people that have had chronic constipation their whole life and nothing they do helps, right? And then you hear like that's one of the first things you hear on when you meet people on carnivores, like, oh, you had chronic constipation your whole life and it just went away. Really? By eating zero fiber, you know? And then we heard a lot more about plants, like things like phytic acid tends to bind up with nutrients, and so your body can't absorb them. The fiber itself binds with a lot of nutrients and water, and it just passes through you. And that a lot of plants you just don't digest. They may basically pass right through you. So you read this thing, it says, oh, it's full of vitamin C or whatever, but one, it's not bioavailable, and two, you aren't really digesting it. And I was having this conversation with a friend the other day. I was talking to her about oxalates, and because she has a kidney stone, and that was another eye opener. Because I think just have you ever known anybody who had a kidney stone, Justin?
Yeah, my dad actually had kidney stones.
Right.
Yeah.
So my friend has a kidney stone, and I was telling her about oxalates because 80% of all kidney stones are oxalate related, oxalate induced, shall we say. And then I started talking to her about oxalates building up in the body, and vulvodynia and stuff like that. And the lights went on for her, you know. And so, as a person myself who suffered from joint pain, things like uh, you when you start looking into joint pain, it's not just carbohydrate related, but it could be related to oxalates or uh, gout-like symptoms from uric acid, right? And come to find out, you know, they was blaming gout on meat, but it's not really meat that causes the uric acid to form crystals. And uric acid is probably the reason why we as creatures don't produce our own vitamin C. We don't necessarily need any more vitamin C than is in the meat. You find out too that meat actually has vitamin C in it. That's kind of a revelation, right? And that little revelation that, you know, when they talk about sailors getting scurvy, and so they would suck on limes or drink lime juice or, you know, have some kind of citrus, you find out that that wasn't necessarily the most ideal way to deal with scurvy. The primary way to deal with scurvy or avoid scurvy was to eat fresh meat, and that eating citrus was a backup for not having a source of fresh meat, right? So we don't realize that. And you know, Linus Pauling jumped on the whole vitamin C thing 50 years ago, and nobody really challenged it. Now we know it's sort of empty. It really has more to do with not eating enough meat and eating too many carbohydrates, which compete with the transport of vitamin C, right? So there's a couple layers in there of like well established science that just isn't well known, you know. So those things were really compelling to me when I first got into this.
Yeah, and the fiber thing definitely. Just more subtext. Growing up, I was mostly raised by my grandparents, grandmother, and great grandmother, and we had butter churns at the house, antique butter churns. And it's like it's pretty interesting. Just I think my big point is the further back in time you go, the more fat and meat based, animal product based the diet is. You know,
Right.
even 2-3 generations ago. You know, um, and they don't have the problems that we have. In our society, or if they did, it was very rare, or it was honestly related to something genetic or exposed to some terrible toxin or smoking. Only at this moment now do we have enough knowledge about toxins, not just plant, but environmental, plastics, cigarettes, etc., and good nutrition, and for some reason, we've decided to muck it all up by being weary of the environmental toxins, the plastics, the nicotine, all those chemicals. Here in California, you can't walk around anywhere without a sign that says this establishment has chemicals known in the state of California to cause cancer, right? And all
Right.
that's great, and it's kind of a joke now, having that plaque everywhere.
Right.
But
It's everywhere.
right, nothing.
Surprised they don't make us wear that on our shirts. Like, oh, there's polyester in there. We got to put a label on you.
And there was things like asbestos exposure. My great grandmother got emphysema or whatever it is from exposure to asbestos. In like an orange factory that she worked at or something ridiculous like that. And we've done a really, really great job of getting rid of all of that, but we've decided to fill our bodies with lectins, phytates, oxalates, what have you, anti-nutrients from the carbohydrates and from the plants.
Yeah, when you come down to it, most of the pesticides we are exposed to, like 90-95% of the pesticides that we consume, are naturally occurring in the plants. They're not the pesticides that are sprayed on them. It's the pesticides that the plants themselves generate. So, once I realized like broccoli and, kale and all this stuff. These weren't natural plants that we ate in the past. These are all new modern adaptations that have been made less toxic through breeding over time. The more you realize there just weren't very many plants to eat. And like we only ate plants when we had to, when animals were scarce. And prior to the demise of the megafauna like mammoths, meat was plentiful. And that's how we evolved for like 3.7 million years all the way up until about 12,000 years ago. We just followed these giant animals around and just ate them. So that was very convincing for me, very compelling.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of my favorite, and you know, it's factual. You know, you can't really, it's not really disputed even in the scientific community. Although there is the off scientist that is like, no, we only ate fruit. You know what I mean? Throughout evolution,
Right.
you're like,
Somehow
where's the
we were hanging out in the trees with the monkeys, just eating fruit all day. Right.
right? Um,
Where we might have come from, 5 million years ago, but or whatever it was that the fruit trees started giving away to the savannas. I mean, maybe that's where we all came from. But in the meantime, we've been doing something else.
right. And you know, so as far as convincing, I mean, I think for me it was more of a, I had literally done everything else, you know. And it was the testimonials, you know, Michaela Peterson, Jordan Peterson, you know, those
John
are,
Baker.
that was the first, yeah, Sean Baker, some of the first, you know, and it seems far and away like maybe even us, me and you talking about it, we might seem far and away from the average person or whatever, but we're really not. And when you get in the community and talk to these people, like it's not just their story, it's their life. They were in that much pain, they were suffering that much,
Right.
you know. And you know, I get it. To, you know, people call this an extreme diet, and I understand that, but you know, when you're suffering that bad, it's like time to make a change. And the other message is just, you know, you, if you've ever talked to, spent time, you know, go volunteer if they'll let you at a local hospice, at a local, you know, hospital where all the people, you know, 60, 70, 80 are at, or an old folks home, you know, whatever, and look at their health, look at their condition, you know, look at what they're feeding them, you know, the boxes of Ensure, a tiny bit of eggs, big pancake, one slice of bacon, you know what I mean? And it's sad. It's so sad.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think when we found out too that like we have this long record of digging up the skeletons of our ancestors, and it's not till people start farming that we start seeing that the people start shrinking, their brains start shrinking, their joints are deteriorated. You could tell a farmer from a hunter gatherer, and I think the language like hunter gatherer is deceiving because you think the gatherers are out just gathering fruits and vegetables all day, but they really ate very little of that because there's little of that available. They might have eaten some roots or whatever, but they mostly hunted. They mostly ate animals, right? It's like the Plains Indians, here in the United States. They basically followed the buffalo around eating the buffalo. They weren't out eating a bunch of carrots and potatoes and arugula and kale. They were some of the tallest people. They were tall, they were strong. There things like cancer and even tooth decay. I think when you look at the Weston A. Price research and the fact that when people don't eat uh, grains and sugar and stuff like that, they tend not to get cavities at all. I mean, how many cavities have you had in your life?
Adult teeth, I actually haven't had any cavities in my adult teeth, at least not from what I can recall or whatever. I
Well, how
feel
about as a
like
child?
as a child, I had one set of baby teeth. I think I had a couple or a few, and they yanked them out. Yeah.
So, I mean, if you just had to guess, what do you think the average person has? I mean, I'd say the average person walking around probably has 6 or 7 fillings, maybe. Something like that. That's not unusual. At least 4.
And I did actually have like a bunch of tenderness, and like I did have like on one side, especially when I'd eat like gum, which I know is like terrible for your teeth, but I mean like gum or other stuff, it would hurt. But like I want to say within the first 4 months of carnivore, that went away, and I haven't had any, like even toothpaste, brushing my teeth would upset my teeth. I know I had gingivitis because I had constant gum bleeding, you
Uh,
know. Um, and so all that is gone now, and it's been
right.
gone since carnivore, which is awesome. I have no sensitivity. I can drink cold drink, and I have a thing of hot like bone broth, you know, and it doesn't. Whereas before, like it would bug my teeth. My teeth are so sensitive, you know.
Yeah, I think one of the real shockers is that too is that a lot of people on carnivore, they tend to have much better immune systems. So they're not getting seasonal flu and cold. They hardly ever get sick. They can go years without getting sick. Whereas most of us were used to like, oh, I got bad allergies, which led to a sinus infection, which led to a cold. And then, every other year I got the seasonal flu, even though I got the flu shot. And I was taking vitamins and this and that. And we think it's normal. It's like, oh, somebody at the office gets sick and it goes around the office. Somebody at home gets sick and then it goes around the home. And then all of a sudden you change your diet and you're like, shit, everybody around me got sick and I didn't, right? There's got to be something to it, right?
It's amazing because for me, this is the first time I've ever been healthy. And it's crazy. I was chronically sick with something from childhood, constantly taking meds, constantly dealing with infections, some kind of pain, some kind of digestive issue all the time, missing school, throat infections, everything, sinus infections all the time. And now that I'm healthy and I get to revel in seeing I like seeing other people being sick because I'm kind of sick now and now. I'm just sick in the head now. That's the thing. But it's like, wow, because when you're living that way, you feel like you're the only, like whenever you have the flu, you feel like you're the only person in the world that has the flu. You know what I mean? Very rarely does someone in the same house get sick at the same time, which is kind of interesting.
Hmm.
But yeah, and so just like not having that, not being down all the time, not having to take days off work and stuff like that is like so empowering, so great. So if you want to try carnivore, like I think that is reason enough. Like just, especially now in the time of COVID or the Tecate virus, obviously, who wants to increase their risk right now,
Yeah, and if you want to take the advice people say, oh, the best way to strengthen your immune system, make sure you have plenty of zinc. Well, you get that from me. If you need a big dose of zinc, you can eat some oysters, which I was eating last week. Actually, I got some more. So, and that is, if you take it in that form, it's much more bioavailable than taking the tablets or the capsules. So you get it. And then the vitamin D. Well, you know what? If you eat meat and get some sunshine, you'll make lots of vitamin D, right? It's a process that goes on in the skin when you're exposed to the sun and you have plenty of cholesterol. That's how you make vitamin D.
And if you really want a book, and I know people aren't into reading, but we've actually read this book for you. Link will be in the description. Fat of the Land. It's
Land.
really hard to read Fat of the Land and not come away with, oh, this makes total sense.
Yeah, when you find out that there's populations all around the world that have been just eating meat since before recorded time and they still exist. And then what happens is when they start eating things like sugar and flour, then they go to hell. It's like they start trading when they start buying white flour. And along that goes tobacco and alcohol, then they start suffering. But even the Inuits who typically started smoking really early because they would trade food, they would catch food and trade it with whalers who were out looking for whales for tobacco. And the kids would start smoking around 6 to 8 years old. Like they didn't think they thought it was great. Their kids are enjoying themselves, so they would eat start smoking early. And even those guys were living longer lives than anybody else who started smoking at that age. So, know, and our prehistoric ancestors would assume they all died young, but we know that's not true. We knew that most of the people who died young actually died in childhood. Like that first 5 years is crucial. Of course, not dying in childbirth was crucial for both the mother and the child. But then by the time if you made it to like 14 or 15 years old, your chances of living to being, 60, 70, 80 years old were actually pretty good. And the people that died along the way is usually some sort of infection from injury or something like that, or getting trampled by an animal, and warfare and stuff like that. But our ancient ancestors, long before medicine and everything else, actually had a chance of living a long time and just doing that on a diet of eating meat. And we have tons of archaeological evidence that shows that we just ate meat because everybody left garbage pits full of bones and shells from shellfish, and their tools that they use for cutting the meat, hunting the meat, and so on and so forth. And the cultivation of grains doesn't come along till the megafauna starts dying off, and then people in the area of the Levant started cultivating wheat. So we know exactly when these things took place. We have the fossil evidence of when people started carving meat off the bones, which was about the oldest known one is about 3.7 million years ago, which is in the period of the pre-humans before we existed, before the Cro-Magnon, which is essentially what we are. Is that was the first modern human, was fully anatomically correct modern human, were the Cro-Magnons. They're actually taller and had bigger brains than we do. So the more plants we eat, actually the smaller and more sickly we get, which is just a matter of the scientific record. So.
And the new research now, I mean, you talk about smoking, seed oils are more detrimental to your health than tobacco and smoking now.
Yeah.
Smoking.
Tell people what seed oils are, because I always think that, especially for new people, that terminology could be a little confusing.
So yeah, so they're the polysaturated, multi-chain. Is that helpful? Did I completely mess it up, Tom?
You're getting more scientific, bro.
Oh, sorry.
You're not wrong. You're just you might. I'm trying to help people new to this understand
right.
that seed oils are what we used to call vegetable oils.
Right. So your canola oil, your grapeseed oil,
even your sacred olive oil.
The sacred olive oil, exactly. Your avocado oil, basically anything that smokes that doesn't congeal at room temperature. So you have butter, like butter. I mean, we live in California, so it's a little different. But if you live anywhere else that's not a desert, you can leave just butter out on the table and it won't go bad or anything, because it'll just keep its form and shape because of the natural fats from
those are what we call oxidized, which means it's
now who's getting sciencey?
It changes because it's exposed to the air. It's really what's going on, right? So butter's much more stable than like peanut oil or canola oil or sunflower oil, or heaven forbid we're still eating Crisco, which is crystallized cottonseed oil. I went to the store when I was looking for oysters. All the canned oysters were in cottonseed oil. I'm like, why would you put that in big letters on the label? Because like, who in their right mind wants to eat cottonseed oil? It sounds disgusting. We don't eat cotton. It's bad enough we got to fry a turkey in peanut oil, but cottonseed oil, that's some sort of crazy abomination, right?
Right. And so all those oils, so the thing is that because they're only more or less liquefied or digestible at a temperature of like 350 degrees, problem is when you eat them, your body's 98.7 roughly, way below 300, 350, 400 degrees, smoking point, as you would say. So it just ends up, our body can't process it, is the bottom line, because it just congeals and stays congealed. I mean, a couple of them can stay in the body for up to 7 years,
Yeah, suffice to say, we didn't evolve to eat that stuff because it was was available in very small quantities. I mean, the only way you got nut oil or seed oil was actually eating a nut or a seed, right? And so it was very, very small quantities, and it wasn't oxidized because it was still trapped in the seed when we ate it, and it wasn't exposed to the air yet, like nature intended. So yeah, so drinking gallons of soybean oil every year in your food, oxidized soybean oil, just isn't something we're adapted to do.
Exactly. And that's the hardest part about carnivore is, the social part, but it's the like, not just going out to eat at a restaurant, but even if you order a steak, even if you're ordering a burger, they slaver that grill in soy oil or peanut oil or something like
Or
that,
even olive oil. Fancy
Or,
restaurants will base steaks in olive oil. I learned to do that a long time ago from a chef. He's like, oh yeah, yeah. Get it nice glistening, you put it on the grill, and it browns up nicely on the grill, but just keep putting the olive oil on there. It's nice and juicy. Yeah.
And now, so you've done both now, and I know I turned you onto the air fryer episode coming soon.
Yeah,
So what's better, slathering your steak on the Barbie or on the grill with olive oil, or throwing on a couple slabs of butter and running it in the air fryer?
Well, let me circle back and answer that question because I could tie this into something you said earlier. I think the problem with Atkins diet was one, it wasn't a step far enough because I don't think people understood that we needed animal fat as fuel and protein basically to rebuild our bodies. And they didn't think of it as a lifestyle, right? They thought of it as a diet, like a diet was something you did temporarily to lose weight or get your blood pressure under control or something like that. And then you went back to eating, bread and pasta and candy and, boozing it up or whatever you do. But a diet was a temporary thing. And I think that a lot of diets probably victims of that because there's lots of ways to lose weight, but the way to gain the weight back is to go back to your old habits, right? So so I think that's the problem with Atkins mostly was it came along at a time when people didn't look at it as a way of life. They looked at it as a temporary change.
And
So
Atkins' death was blamed on his diet when it seems to be that he died of like an accident or something. And like,
yeah, he slipped on the ice and he lived in New York, slipped on the ice, hit his head, had a traumatic brain injury and lingered in the hospital for a while. And then, eventually died of heart failure, but he died of heart failure because his brain was injured. It's like a lot of ways.
and they weren't feeding him Atkins in the hospital after the,
Yeah, well, I don't think he had any chance of recovering from his injury, right?
Right.
So even like diabetes, the way most diabetics die is from heart failure. So they suffer with diabetes for years, and then eventually it clogs up their arteries, and they have heart failure. So yeah, you can imagine a lot of people in the hospital they die because they can't breathe anymore or their heart stops, right? So it's just, that's just how we go a lot of the time. Now I forgot. I was going to circle this back. You asked the question, and I was
Olive oil steak versus air fryer and butter.
Oh, yeah. I have been traditionally I've been a proud uh, griller of foods. I love going out to the barbecue. We call it a barbecue, but we really spend most of our time cooking food really fast. The barbecue's traditionally slow. And then I just didn't have time for it because eating meat all the time is a lifestyle now. It's not just, oh yeah, I'm gonna barbecue today and take it easy and whatever. Every day I'm cooking my food, my meat. I gave up the grill just for the most part, and because of the time constraint, was cooking in cast iron on the stove for 3 years now as a carnivore, and then everybody tells me, "Oh, you got to get an air fryer. You got to get an air fryer." So instead of getting one of the little plastic round air fryers, that I got an air fryer oven. It's actually a small convection oven. I can cook up to 5 steaks in there at the same time. For a busy person like me, you can't beat it because you put the steaks in there, you turn it on, starts warming up. It lets you know when it's warm. By then, my steaks are at room temperature if I've taken them out of the fridge. Pop them in there, set the timer. They cook. I can go do something else. The timer shuts it off so the steaks don't overcook. And I can rinse and repeat that every day. And if I want to get extra steaks ready because I'm going to have a time crunch, I want to have them cooked for a couple days in a row already. But like I said, I could put 5 steaks in this little tiny. It looks like a toaster oven, but it's marketed as an air fryer dehydrator. Blah blah blah. It's made by Oster, right? The one who was Justin and I got the same ones. They were on sale. It's like it's a bargain. Let's try it. Now he already had a regular air fryer at home, the one that's been real popular. So he was game to try a bigger one, right? And it rocks. It's just so convenient, right? Everything comes out exactly the same every day, and you don't have to stand there and babysit.
So taste butter with air fryer or olive on the grill, olive oil.
Yeah. So this is another thing where Justin's corrupted me. He said one day he says, "Oh man, I've been putting butter on my New York strips, and they're just amazing." So yeah, so I did that. I put butter, some Kerrygold. I had some Kerrygold sitting in the fridge. I don't actually eat a lot of butter, and I put it on there and threw it in the air fryer, and it was fantastic. It was nothing short of amazing. So yeah, totally. The flavor wise, there's no way olive oil competes with butter. Yeah, olive oil is second grade crap compared to just everyday butter for sure.
And just to, since we're talking about things that we've corrupted each other with,
Yeah.
Braunschweiger, right? Which is
Right.
A delicacy from where? Maybe not a delicacy.
I think that's German. Braunschweiger.
German. Right.
Yeah.
And what is it again, Tom?
It's pork liver and pork fat with seasonings, spices. Marjoram, I think, is a main spice that they put in Braunschweiger. So it's ground liver. It's like a pate. It's a pate is what it is. German pate.
And so again, you look at these delicacies, especially in colder climates, and you got your meat or fat or organ, really just comes down to that. You throw some of that on some cheese and it's good eating. It's really good eating.
Yeah, I think it's kind of in the realm of like a sausage. It's soft, it's spreadable, but I think it was kind of like it's meat that they prepared that way so it lasts a long time, right? It doesn't It's already kind of cooked. It's mixed with fat. It's seasoned. It could sit in the fridge a long time. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the expiration time is like on that stuff, but it's lengthy. It has a long shelf life. Yeah, and a little bit of Braunschweiger on a slice of cheese or something. That's like the ultimate hors d'oeuvre right there, right?
Yeah,
it's just totally insanely good.
I even have some right after the video.
Like if I'm gonna have a snack, this is like junk food for me. I will put Braunschweiger on a piece of sausage. Like sometimes I'll get like pre-made sausage, patties that like you're just supposed to warm up, and I'll just spread Braunschweiger on it, and that's like my snack food. Like if I want to take a snack to work or something, that's what I do. Or sometimes I'll take the package of Braunschweiger. I'll just be eating it with a spoon. In fact, my boss walked in. He's like, God, he's like, every time I see you eating just meat, it's like, my dad ate Braunschweiger all the time. He used to get white bread, slather it in mayo, and then put the Braunschweiger, big spoonfuls of Braunschweiger. He'd mash it on there and eat it. And I'm like, hey, he's doing pretty good except for the mayo on the bread. Don't be a jealous hater. But yeah, I love Braunschweiger. I'll even do it on bologna. So that's my other junk food. It's like, I need something that I don't have to cook, something convenient. Bologna. You're better off eating bologna and cheese than you are eating Twinkies or gulping down, coffee with a bunch of sugar in it or whatever. You're better off doing stuff like that than all those other things. And yeah, there might be a little preservatives and stuff like that and in sausages or Braunschweiger or hot dogs or bologna or whatever. But at the end of the day, that stuff seems to be way better. Even Saladino mentioned this in his book, Carnivore Code. Paul Saladino. There was one of these studies where they're trying to convict red meat of uh, uh, causing heart disease and stuff like that. So one study showed that bacon actually prevented heart disease. So, so imagine that. So yeah. So you're probably better off eating some bacon and some French fry and some cheese or something like that, even together, right? You would think that eating pork liver with pork fat in bologna, which is, animal leftovers, made into a lunch meat, shall we say. You'd think that would be like really horrible for you because that's what we've been raised to believe. But in the end, it's kind of optimal fuel, right?
Yeah, totally. It's great.
Even just a piece of bologna and a slice of cheese. Who didn't enjoy that,
Oh yeah.
right? It
Just don't get the American cheese because that's not real cheese.
well, hey, I'd rather see somebody eat that American cheese, that sliced cheese, than I would say candy.
Broccoli,
Yeah.
candy bar. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I mean, what potato chips? Would bologna or potato chips?
Bologna,
Right.
obviously.
American sliced cheese or crackers?
American sliced cheese.
That's my point. Right?
You didn't talk about Velveeta though. I think it's crossed the line when you talk about Velveeta.
I don't know. We should analyze that. We should look into that. We should get a package of Velveeta and see what's in it before we condemn it. But if I'm not mistaken, it's like I think it's actually made of vegetable oil or something like that. Whereas something like processed American cheese is like a tiny amount. Sometimes it has a tiny amount of like soy lecithin in it. We're talking
Right.
like it's like maybe 1% or less. So
Right. And when we are talking about the bologna and the hot dog, it clearly says on the package, it's like less than 2% of whatever the nitrates or whatever's that's in it, which how
well,
much of that are we actually absorbing? Do we detox that? It's really hard to,
right, and the
to
nitrate
say.
and a nitrite that they preserve food with is celery juice, right? So if you've seen people go on these diets where they drink, all the celery juice and stuff like that, and it didn't kill them, do you think a little tiny bit of it in your bologna is going to kill you? I don't think so, right? Because the
Right.
celery juice breaks down into the same compounds in your stomach. So yeah, so I wouldn't worry about it, folks. Look, meat's healthy for you, and sure, it could be adulterated, have a bunch of crap in it. And if you have autoimmune diseases, you might want to avoid all kinds of spices and stuff like that. I know I do. I need to. Somebody like Justin, you might get some headaches from it, right? Gluten and stuff like that might trigger a headache. Something in soy sauce might trigger a headache,
Oh yeah.
right?
Digestive issues or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And here's a big takeaway. So I mean, carnivore in the beginning, all didn't really start out really eating a whole lot of steaks, because you got to learn how to price them and cook them and stuff like that. But
Right.
if you're really into bacon, which be honest, who isn't, hot dogs and hamburgers and cheese, he'll do fine. Like really,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I really think you would.
We were talking about InNOut earlier. Like one of the tricks, if you live anywhere near an InNOut, you go in there and ask for a Flying Dutchman, and they will serve you 2 hamburger patties with a slice of American cheese between it, right? And that's on their menu. And so I know one of the guys at work went to InNOut and he called back to the office, "Hey, anybody want anything?" I said, "Yeah, give me a couple Flying Dutchmen." And he thought I was kidding. Like people who grew up don't know that InNOut has this, they call it the secret menu. All the restaurants know these things like Flying Dutchman, or you can get a burger. They call it protein style. So it's a burger wrapped in lettuce. And there's no bun. Okay. So there's stuff like that on the menu. There's animal fries and stuff like that. But you can go out and do that. And like Dr. Fong talks about this. A lot of his patients, they succeeded by going to fast food restaurants and ordering hamburger patties with cheese, whether it be Wendy's, McDonald's. Our buddy Joe, even in Australia, he goes to McDonald's and orders
Macca's.
Macca's. Yeah, mate, we go to Macca's. So they don't actually serve kangaroo over there, so don't be too disappointed. I was. I thought everything is going to be made out of koalas, kangaroos, and dingoes, but apparently they don't actually eat much of that over there, which, aside from my disappointment, it makes sense, right? So, anyways, lots of people have lots of success, and they're not eating, the very best grass fed steaks every day, right? Yeah. So it's not as hard as you might think, and I encourage people just to give it a try and see if you feel better, right?
And hit us up. We're not these super far and away. We got Facebook groups. We're on Minds. We're on, all these are here, obviously. Hit us up if you're honestly struggling. If you really want to give this the old college try, as they say. Yeah, we'll be willing to help. Especially in the beginning, and even advanced carnivores.
Yeah, and you learn that it doesn't have to be expensive. It could be expensive, but it's not really any more expensive than what a lot of other people do. I mean, you roll into Starbucks and you get a $4 cup of coffee, and then you go over here and you spend $7 on a burger, fries, and a Coke, or actually you probably can't even get that for that kind of money hardly anymore. But you'd be better off, in my estimation, if you went to a burger place and ordered like a pastrami bacon cheeseburger and skip the fries and Coke, and even ate that with a bun, than you would if you just ate a more modest burger with fries and Coke, right? Yeah. So I mean, little changes like that. But I tell people, now just try eating meat for a day. And a lot of people tell me, "Oh, I could totally do that. That would be easy. I'd love that." And I say, "Well, just do it and see how you feel, right? Just see how you feel. Just enjoy it." And a lot of people do. Some people are like, "Oh, I can't digest meat, or I don't like meat, or whatever." I get it. It's not for everybody, and maybe it's something to work up to, but it shouldn't be that big a deal. And there is a lot of evidence out there that that is exactly how we evolved, so.
And there's other stories, and I think this will be the last one, but it's a fun story. People that were vegan for a while, then they have one slice of salmon or one cut of beef, and they end up with a sex drive. Basically,
Yeah.
we're talking, morning salute, in the middle of the night and stuff like that, or women just, starting their period or having, whoa, a little bit of tingly, you know what I mean? Just from being
Yeah,
vegan for so long.
there are quite a few nutrients in meat that are not available or scarcely available in the plant world, and so unfortunately a lot of vegans, vegetarians become deficient. They do have to do a lot of supplementing. Some of them make a practice of eating eggs and fish periodically because they know you can't survive without that. Your brain requires a lot of omega-3 fatty acid, and most of that, especially if it's not oxidized, it needs to come from things like eggs and fish and meat and stuff like that. And there's carnitine, help me out, what's the other one?
Adenine? Is there an A one?
Leucine, yeah,
Leucine.
yeah. So a lot of those things are just absent in the plant world. And I love to tell this story about beta carotene. So it was like everybody's like, "Oh yeah, you need to get your vitamin A. You got to eat lots of carrots." The carrots, vitamin A is really something called retinol, and carrots actually contain something called beta carotene. And beta carotene isn't actually retinol, but some people's bodies can make retinol out of it by splitting the molecule. Well, as it turns out, less than half the population can do that. And that half the population in a descending order can make small amounts from carrots. So, aside from the fact that carrots weren't really available as we evolved, at least not modern carrots, they were just straggly looking little brown roots before we bred them into big, bright orange things that the Easter Bunny eats. Yeah, we can't actually get hardly any beta carotene to convert to retinol. So, like all these things, this folklore that we grew up with, really has done nothing but confuse us and confound our ability to eat well. So, you're better off just getting your vitamin A or your retinol right from the meat, just like your vitamin C and your carotene. I mean, your carnitine and your, yeah. all those things that you can't get from plants or just isn't bioavailable in plants. So, anything else to close this one out?
No, I think that's good. Just, the nutrition's in the meat. We've been doing it for centuries. We've been lost and confused for the last, 100 years or so, especially the last 100 years,
I think that's a shocker that we find out that heart attacks are rare in the United States or anywhere else before about 1900. And it wasn't until we got to about the 1940s, 1950s that they became common. And that epidemic of heart attacks is one of the things that spurred on this movement. And before that, we ate lots of meat and a lot less vegetable, a lot less grain and stuff like that. And we moved in the wrong direction. So a lot of people are surprised to find out that people weren't dropping dead of heart attacks 200 years ago like they are now. They weren't getting type 2 diabetes like they are now. They aren't getting cancer like they are now. So a lot of that we believe is diet related. We don't think it has to do with cosmic rays or pollutants or anything near as much as it does to do with our diet, right?
Right.
Well, until next time, thank you very much for being here, Justin. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for all the support from everybody. Thank you for all the comments. I know a lot of people enjoyed the coffee video. Hopefully, we'll get some more videos that people enjoy. And this one might be a little bit less for the core audience, a little bit more for the new people. But until next time, I want everybody out there to eat some meat, feel better, and whatever you do,
Don't fall down the carb hole.